My name is Michael Kerman, and I'm here with James Hawkins to do one of our one-on-one sessions where you get to know a speaker, maybe one you know well already or one you'd like to learn more about. James is presenting a webinar for us in November. We'll talk more about that. In the next couple of days, you will receive an email with this video if you need or want to watch it again or pass it on to a friend or whatever. So that's, I think, the introductory remarks. So James Hawkins, I'm really glad to welcome you here today to our many therapists in the audience, most of whom are probably Canadians. And I usually like to start off with an origin story of what led you in your life through mentors and experiences and education to the point where you met Sue Johnson and the EFT world. You know, Sue Johnson, by the way, was very important to me,
Hmm.
the late Sue Johnson, and to many people in our audience. She started presenting for us in the early 2000s when she was in Ottawa, and she was such a delight. We had many different programs with her, and I'm very happy that you're one of the people, along with Leanne Campbell and others, who are carrying on the torch that was so important to her. So, James,
Hmm.
welcome, and let us know about you.
Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate you all for inviting me. I feel like I've gotten, what is it, 15 years now in psychotherapy. And now I feel like, yeah, I'm at that point in my career where I just want to sit back in my chair and tell all the younger clinicians, like, this is how I started and this is what it was like, you know? No. No, seriously. How did I get to the point? You know, and it's so funny, Michael, as you asked that question. I just thought about Sue even there. Sue would always think about with her clients, she would say, I always want to know what led the person to become who they are in front of me today. And I guess that's the gist of your question is how did James end up who he
Mhm.
is in front of you all today?
Yeah.
James Hawkins, I grew up I was an army child. My dad was an army guy. Um, uh, him and my mom, they split when I was young. Had a great family around me, though. It's extended family that was around me. I eventually joined the military myself as well. And I remember one day just out hanging without my military friends, and we were riding around in San Antonio, Texas. And I saw a billboard for this couple doing marriage and family therapy. And I was like, hey, I think I want to do that. And at that time, I was a medic in the Air Force. And what I loved about being a medic is I love talking to my patients and walking with my patients through difficult situations. Um, and then I decided one day, I said, I'm going to get out of the military and I'm going to go to grad school. And I went to grad school to begin my counseling career. And one of my professors introduced me to attachment theory. I loved it. I read it a bunch. And then my professor said she knew I wanted to do couples therapy. And she says, well, have you heard of this lady named Sue Johnson? I was like, no. And then I went on my Sue rabbit trail and I read everything I could find from Sue Johnson and just really fell in love with her model. And that was probably back in about 2008 when I found Sue's material. And that was a lot of my work and research in my doctoral program. Fast forward my career, I worked in hospice for a while doing bereavement work. I also worked with foster and adoptive families, doing a lot of counseling work there with them. And then I came to work with another EFT trainer, Dr. Ryan Reyna, and he got me introduced to George Fowler. And then I took a lot of my EFT work actually, and I was applying it in the public sector. So I was using like Sue's hold me tight conversations and a lot of her work around attachment injury to facilitate racial conversations in the community. And so that's a lot. And then that's how I really got to meet Sue. Sue found out what I was doing with her work. She loved it. She gave me advice. She let me use her resources and wisdom to help facilitate that work in society. And then she invited me to become a trainer. And I was thankful I got to work with Sue from about 2019 up until her passing. And so that's a little bit of the quick synopsis of how James ran into Sue Johnson. And it was so funny. Even when I first met Sue, I was super nervous on like, how do I introduce myself to Sue Johnson? So I'm like, okay, I'm practicing. I'm like, Dr. Johnson, my name is Dr. Hawkins. And in Sue fashion, when I called her Dr. Johnson, she just comes up to me. She says, "It's Sue," and then she gives me a big old hug, and that was our relationship ever since then.
Yeah. And she told clients that as well. Call me Sue. And and she talked about being raised in a pub and you
Yep.
learn to be with all kinds of people. I want to talk about your contributions to EFT, but I know you've brought some of the ideas into the issue of race, and
Hmm.
especially in the United States or everywhere in the world,
Hmm.
it's an issue. So tell us a little bit your contributions and involvement in that end before we dig into EFT.
Yeah. I worked on a project I called Healing Conversations for a while. And what would happen is maybe either an organization or a couple of community organizations would invite me in to intentional moments. Either they've had some issues around race or the discussions around race. And what I would do is just in typical EFT fashion, I would just follow the EFT roadmap and I would go in and I would want to find out what the cycle looked like as far as like, so what is it, what does racial conversations look like already in your organization or amongst these organizations? Where do y'all do well at it? Where do you get stuck in it? What happens when the topic even comes up? And what I began to notice as I stood back and watched some of it play out, I'm gonna go right now, I'm gonna speak an American kind of mainstream for right now, is anytime the topic around race would come up, there's a couple ways where the conversation gets sidetracked. One, the issue around race carries so much emotion, and not just for black and brown bodies, but I think also for people in white bodies, because the topic of race does bring up like who's good, who's bad, who's right, who's wrong. It's a topic that's loaded with trauma and pain. And when the topic comes up, it creates a lot of emotion, and then sometimes people think it's just the content of the information that's difficult, but no one pays attention to the emotion that's really driving the conversation. And then people end up, as in EFT, what we would say in EFT is you get stuck in negative cycles when people can't activate their caregiving system. But it's really hard to have a caregiving system when you're in a state of protection, or it's also hard to share and reach vulnerably when you're in a state of fearful protection. And so what I would do is I would help go in and help them find the fear, talk and bring the fear up. And can they begin to even have conversations about the fear, even in the conversation? And then just seeing the cycle and how we all can get stuck in the cycle in different ways around the racial conversation, and how to reorder that conversation. So that's been a lot of the work. I haven't done it in a while just because it is emotionally heavy and it's hard. To be
Mhm.
a black man leading that conversation gets really difficult and really hard. But I will be doing it again. I think a group in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is contracting me to come
Wow.
back there and do that part. So,
Well, I think that's especially important work these days. I mean, it always is. And it's interesting when you talk about dealing with highly emotional issues. Who's right? Who's wrong? It's been going on for a long time. There's conflict. So we can move on to EFT and couples. It's
okay,
a nice segue because I'm sure we can also see the connections. And,
there you go.
the program you're doing for us is repairing relationships. All therapists deal with relationships, especially ones that are ruptured. Now, I know you've made some innovations, and so I want to really dig into a little bit because I heard and read a little about the tempo. I don't know how you pronounce it. Framework. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, yeah.
Call it.
That came from my colleague Ryan Reyna. We use it. It's called. We used to call. We use the basis of that word comes from Magda Arnold's work in like social baseline theory. I think is a little bit or social appraisal theory. And what Magda Arnold's research says is that in moments we're always trying to read, or how we should approach a situation. And what Magda Arnold would say, there's some kind of cue or activating event, and then based upon when we look at that cue or activating event, and in couples work, there's something that happens in the relationship that says danger, danger, danger. either we're disconnected or my safe, trusted other is too far away and I can't access them. And it sends off a message that gets our attention, which then would activate the attachment system to read the moment. And what Magda Arnold would say, the first appraisal of a situation is the emotional or limbic appraisal, meaning it's that part of our body that it's like the fear center, the amygdala of the brain. Before it even gets a chance to think, it just says danger, watch out. And many of our clients, though, they're not even aware of that, how that when that signal gets activated, particularly in our Western world, that the most of our clients in the Western world, what they recognize is the second appraisal, which is the meaning appraisal, the perception. In other words, the story we tell ourselves about the cue or the activating event. It might be something like, if you come home from work and you're looking forward to connecting with your loved one, but when you try to say hello to them, you just see this means look on their face. And then we say, oh, that means you don't care about me. You're not interested in me. You're perturbed by my presence. But really, what we're missing is even what happened to your heart in that moment. Well, I felt disappointment. It kind of hurt. Most of our clients never even pay attention to those appraisals. What happens is they go to the last part of what Magda Arnold talks about, and they just go into their action tendency. And so that might be, well, you didn't pay attention to me when I come in. I'm going to get louder, or I'm going to get passive aggressive, or I'm going to criticize you to get you to pay attention. Or I could just give up and just kind of go away and go do my own thing and just kind of, lick my wounds in a way. So it's the Q act. There's a emotional appraisal, cognitive appraisal, and an action tendency. With L tempo, what we're bringing in. So tempo is another acronym for just saying trigger for the activating event. E is the emotional appraisal. M is the message, the kind of meaning making, and then P is protective tendency. Then we added the longing in because what we noticed was it's many of our clients, particularly in couples, it's they get stuck in a fight actually because they had a hope
Mm.
that was not able to be acknowledged. So with my clients, I want to also find what that longing was. So might say something like, "So hey, can you take me back when you were even just pulling up in your driveway and you were thinking about going in the house and seeing your person that you love? What were you hoping for?" Well, I was just hoping that they would like kind of turn towards me and smile. Because what would that smile mean for you? That they miss me and that they also wanted me back. But when you didn't see that smile, what did you see instead of a smile? It's like I just
Mm.
saw that stern look. Oof. And what does that stern look say to you? That they don't care, that they maybe didn't miss me. And how did that make you feel? I was mad. I was frustrated. Whew. And what did you do with that frustration, that message that maybe my partner doesn't want to see me? Well, I started slamming doors and slamming stuff around just to get their attention. And all that is that L tempo is a way of what Sue would say is we need to take our clients, the elements of their inner world, and put the elements of their inner world together to make sense. So that way we can help guide them in new attachment behaviors.
Yeah, I wonder, this was a contribution to the EFT field. What was what was happening that you saw needed to being addressed? What did this bring to the table, through Magda Donald and through your work? What was it you were hoping to bring that would make a difference for therapists who are either EFT therapists or anybody?
Yeah, I think part of it is, Michael, that's a great question. Is we can always just focus on like what upset you, what hurt you, but we never look at what people long for. And actually, I
Mm.
would say part of what gets couples in trouble is they've gotten so fearful of being abandoned or rejected that they've given up talking about their longing. And now I'm not talking about the longing like, well, if you would just wash the dishes, if you would just put your phone down. Those are more like kind of like demands, right? But to talk about, I just need to know that I matter to you. I want to know that I'm important to you. Um, um, that in moments when I want them to be able to talk about also what they long for, because I got this one from Gail Palmer, who's also up there in Canada. You probably know Gail.
Hmm.
I remember
Hmm.
watching one of Gail's sessions, and Gail was trying to work with an avoidant strategy, or what an EFT would say the withdrawer, to get them re-engaged with themselves. But the withdrawer kept blocking Gail out and wouldn't let Gail access their pain. And all of a sudden, Gail switched her focus from focus on the partner's pain to she says, could you just show me, like, in this place, even when you shut down your heart and you go away, my guess is you don't go away because you don't care about your partner, that there's something actually there that you're looking for, that you want. Can you help me understand, like, what you're wanting? That, as you shut down, what is it your heart is hoping for? And she started working on accessing their longing. And then I said, Gail, why did you make that switch to go from pain to longing? She said, James, and this is a profound statement she said to me. She said, James, longing and pain are two sides of the same coin. If you
Mm,
access one, the other one's not too far away. So if I can even access my client's longing, right on the other side is the pain of not being able to get the thing that their heart hopes for. Um, and then, by the way, also too, some clients, they don't want to focus on the negative in therapy. They're so worried about causing a fight or making or being seen as bad. But some clients can make more space to talk about their longing. And so I will take that as a positive inroad with a client sometimes. Say, hey, I just wanted you to know, I see what you're fighting for here. That in those moments when you shut down, that's just your best way to try and not let the relationship to not let the emotion get overwhelming in the relationship. That's your way of kind of protecting it, so that what could happen? Well, so that we could just kind of have a good evening and be friends and enjoy each other. So thank you for letting me see what your heart hopes for. That's all you're going for. Even though the cycle tells you that what you're doing is wrong, you're just really hoping to have a good time with the person you love. Whew, thank you. But how do you know when that's not happening? When that hope is not going to ever come true, or is getting further and further away? So I just use that longing as an inroad to the pain and disappointment.
mhm. I guess longing helps deal with the discouragement that many couples feel.
Yeah,
I would imagine some couples have been to other therapists or been in therapy individually. And what are the best ways to deal with that discouragement? You've talked about
yeah.
dealing with the longing. Are there other ways you can deal with the most discouraged clients who maybe the ones you have the least hope for, but you're going to try again to reach them and have them reach each other?
Yeah. Good. Wow. These are good questions, Mike. I should have studied up today. No, seriously though. And this used to be a hotly contested thing, because I think sometimes in what I've heard at times though in couples therapy is sometimes therapists can have a fear of their client's hopelessness. But I would actually say hopelessness is a great place for us to join our clients. And here's what I mean. So going back to the discouragement, I just need to make sure that the discouragement becomes a real tangible thing in the room so we can actually deal with it. If there's discouragement there and we never acknowledge it, it feels like a gray cloud that just follows our clients through their lives. But if we can make the discouragement clear and vivid, it gives an opportunity for connection, especially if it's a discouragement about something in the relationship. So, like, if I'm working with you, Michael, I might say, like, so, hey, Michael, can you kind of help me out here? That there's something that Michael really wants, but despite Michael's best efforts, this negative cycle just keeps getting in the way over and over and over. And that takes you to a very discouraging place, Michael. But I'm curious, in that discouragement, do you or your partner ever get to take time to understand what's in that discouragement and what it means for your relationship? Or in that discouragement, is that even a place that y'all also end up disconnected? And not only are you already disconnected from the person you love, but now you're alone with your own discouragement and nowhere to go with that. Am I getting that right? So
Mhm.
can we stay here, Michael, to just get that discouragement clear and maybe help your partner understand it and see it and be with you in a different way so you don't have to be alone with that discouragement? Because for me, all emotion is just an opportunity for connection. That I don't really in my brain, I don't code positive and negative emotion. I would say it's positive and negative experience with emotion. Because if I can be sad and someone can love me and comfort me in my sadness, that actually turns it to a positive experience. Not saying it feels good, but at least I get comforted in my sadness. So even with discouragement can be used as a positive, especially if that discouragement is, I love you so much, but I don't know how to connect to you. Um, I get discouraged when I try my best to kind of be there for you, but I just don't know how because I get lost in my own feelings. Can y'all hear the inherent positive in that message? The discouragement is actually a cry of like, I miss you. I need you. It doesn't always have to be, the discouragement doesn't have to be a point of disconnection. It could be a point of connection.
I love your use of the word curiosity, you know,
Yes.
important word. The people you're dealing with coming in for therapy are feeling vulnerable. And I know you co-created something called Success and Vulnerability.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Yeah. It's so one that even the title goes back to, it's just really capturing the heart of what Sue taught us is clients need to be able to have success in vulnerability. Now, partly for us in the therapy field, that means we actually have to go experientially to the moments when they feel the pain and the discouragement of those negative cycles of interaction, that to try and teach our clients to have a new relationship outside the vulnerability, we don't really feel like that translates. That the clients, if this is this is kind of like attachment 101. What we would say is they need to have a felt sense of safety. A felt sense of safety. So in other words, I need to go to places in incremental doses throughout therapy, accessing newer and deeper depths of vulnerability. And every time we access a new, deeper depth of vulnerability, and when we say have success in it, what we mean is success. Just going from Bowlby's research is you have the ability to openly and vulnerably share what your heart is feeling and longing for, and your partner or partners have the ability to vulnerably allow their caregiving system to show up and care for you, and you can receive their care. So, in other words, all parties in the relationship have to be able to have engagement in a vulnerable space if the relationship bond is going to be strengthened and secured. To try and teach our clients outside of their vulnerability, it really doesn't translate because they need to have a felt experience of, I took a risk, you caught me, now I can trust you more. Without what Sue would say is no risky, no getty. No risky, no getty. That when clients take risk and vulnerability and they get caught, that teaches them to do it more and it actually builds the loving bond.
One thing I read about and hear a lot about is the way therapists are bringing together different approaches to therapy, where before people were maybe in different silos. I'm in this, I'm in that. So internal family systems
Hmm.
is a very popular
Yep.
uh, form, and I understand that you've been exploring how to integrate some of those ideas with EFT. Is that
Michael,
true?
So I just got to make a confession here. I am a reform withdrawer myself, and the fact that you're finding out all this information about me is saying I got to go lock down my internet profile. You are doing a really good job. I don't know who your researcher is, but they did a good job. But yes, it was a couple years ago. Actually, I was every now and then I teach at another institute, and Dick Schwartz was there, and him and I
Uh-huh.
got a good chance to talk about the interplay between IFS and EFT, where we're similar, where we're different. Now, I like the parts work element of IFS. I really do, but I treat it a little bit differently in EFT. And here's one way. For me, parts work. A lot of the parts work I do within EFT is between longing and protection, which is kind of correlates with what he's talking about also with his parts, like the protector parts, kind of right. And what I would say is, all of our clients, we're always working with their longing and their protection. They're just running side by side. And usually for the clients who come in clinical distress, the protection is winning out and the longings are having to be stuffed down. And as a therapist, I need to always be making a read. Am I working with that open longing and vulnerability, or am I working with their kind of reactive protection? Because each side will require me to speak to it differently. But with IFS, when from an EFT for me, when I'm speaking to the protector, I'm just trying to give it all the permission and the good reasons for why it exists. One, in that client's maybe life in general, especially if maybe there's elements of marginalization or oppression in society, also their attachment history, but also their relationship history with the person or people that they're coming in with. That these protectors showed up for very good reasons. And I can't just ask my clients to give up their protection right away to do vulnerability. That would be
Hmm.
crazy of my client to do it, which I guess as therapists, we shouldn't say crazy. That would not make sense for our clients to do that, right? But I do need to understand their protection and what their protection is trying to protect and the fear in it and also the hope in it. What is it
Hmm.
trying to do? So that's one quick way where I think about that part of the protectors. I have a couple that I see, and I have another colleague who's an IFS therapist that sees one member of the couple. And every now and then, that therapist finds a protector or that they work with, and then I use it in EFT to ask the partner. I ask the partner to speak to the protectors of the other partner. So,
Hmm.
hey, right here, right now, as this part of your partner that's protected her ever since she was a little girl shows up and you see the good reason. Not only did this part protect her as a little girl, it's even protected her at moments in this relationship when you
Hmm.
couldn't be available to her. But now, as you see that and you're not scared of it and you don't go away, what would you say to this part of your partner as it shows up right here, right now? And I would hope that they say that I understand why you're here. And even with this part of you, I can love this part of you as well. Whew. Because if the partner, now this is going to Sue's work, Sue would say the response of a therapist is like a flashlight, but the response of a partner is like a stadium floodlight. Because if
Hmm.
that partner can respond to that protective part, that can be the power that makes that protector feel like I'm no longer needed. Somebody else is looking out for us.
Wow. When you're speaking, when I hear about IFS, I was also reading and hearing about your views of the therapist presence in sessions
Yeah.
and the importance of therapist presence. And about 10 years ago, Frank Anderson, one of the leaders in IFS, was giving a workshop, and he said, I don't think the therapist presence is very important. And I
Mm.
was kind of shocked. 10 years later, he came back and said, 180 degrees. I was totally wrong. He thought people were doing work on themselves, and the therapist was more like a chorus, but really they're doing work on themselves. But then he said, no, I was wrong. So tell me about your views
Yeah.
about therapist presence and how people can work on their own presence with people. What are some of the keys and the tools you might suggest?
Mm. Well, yeah. So I definitely would be a staunch believer like who you are as a clinician matters. What Bowlby would say is the therapist needs to take on, and Sue kind of would say this too, the therapist does take on a temporary position as a stronger, wiser other. And now that's not talking about power and societal hierarchy, but what it is saying is just going back to attachment. The therapist must have an ability to look at the fearful, to look at to the therapist needs to be able to be able to have a presence that has courage and bravery in the face of distressing emotion. Because if the therapist can't embody and be okay in the presence of distressing emotion, then the client's nervous system is still all alone because the client is struggling, they get overwhelmed by it, their partner can't be with them in it, and if the therapist can't be in them with it, then we're all lost. But if a therapist can say, I feel this too, I see how scary it is, I even feel that fear in my body, but I want to stay here with you to help us do this differently, that helps in a way that co-regulates the nervous system of the client. Also, I would say on that too is the therapist not only this is a I got this from Sue too. Attachment lives in the bones of our clients, but it also lives in the bones of the therapist. So actually, what I would say to therapists is, therapist, you are a thermostat, not just a thermometer in the therapy session. Meaning, I need to allow my attachment system to be able to feel the inner world of my client. Because as I feel their fear and their hopes and their longings touch my body, that then is what actually loads up and makes my clinical choices for the interventions and how I'm with them. If I cut that part of me off, I have cut off my attachment kind of like thermostat that says, uh oh, the temperature is going up, James. Uh oh, the temperature is going down, James. And not only does a thermostat read the temperature in the room, it also adjusts the temperature in the room. So even in the face of my clients' fears of their vulnerability, when I feel them getting afraid in my body, and I say, hey, I want to just so appreciate. I see how your body's working so hard here and how this is getting scary. And it makes me nervous too. And I want to make sure this goes right. So can I stay with you and can we slow this down? Because I don't want to just get away from this moment and let the cycle take over because I want to make sure your partner gets a clear message of what your heart is going through here. And I think that's what my body's telling me. Does your body feel the same way? And if they say yes, then I'm like, good. I'm glad that we can be in attunement here.
As you know, I heard years ago when I was in social work school of a family therapist who used to get on the floor with the when the children were in the room.
Hmm.
He'd get on the floor and he'd play with or have conversation with the children, and other therapists would say, "No, that's not very professional." And he said, "If I'm not growing, they're not growing." It's just a
Correct.
variation of the kind of involvement that's mutual between the therapist and the client.
That's right. That's right.
The workshop you have with us in November is on repairing relationships, and I'm sure there'll be people with EFT backgrounds who'll be coming. But also, we're opening up to everyone, maybe people who are curious about EFT and even not, but they're curious about repairing relationships. So,
Hmm.
what specific repair skills do you think therapists will walk away with that are most important and that you'll be dealing with in your workshop?
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So, uh, the first thing that with repair is you got to know where it was broken. So you need to figure out to even before you go in and start trying to intervene, is can you as a therapist even be able to clearly track where the breakdown is in their bond, in the bond of the relationship? Can you track and break down where the attachment process has gone offline? And that's the first part to repair is being able to assess where repair is actually needed. The second part is of that is being able to recognize what does repair look like in the early phase of treatment because it's different. Because it would be nice if you could just go in there and say, okay, we're going to cut this out, and do this. But it almost reminds me of so I used to be a nurse in the military, and the way it makes me think is which you probably knew that already, Michael, with all your research. Anyway, is in the first phase is I've got to stabilize you before we go into surgery. So, if a patient wants to go in, and no matter what procedure, I need to know, can your body sustain going under general anesthesia? Can your body sustain being opened up to the possible pathogens that are going to be in any operating procedure? And I got to stabilize you. So part of repair in EFT in the early stages, you got to stabilize some of the chaos and the reactivity that your clients might bring in when they're in their very protected place. Then the second phase of EFT in repair is now that we've kind of stabilized and there's enough safety to go into the deeper vulnerable work is what does that deeper vulnerable work where it restructures the bond of the relationship. And in EFT, that's where we get the withdrawn partner to re-engage and we help the pursuing partner to begin to soften. And then the final stage of for us in EFT is repair is once we've done that, when the withdrawer is no longer withdrawing as much, and the pursuer is softened in their pursuit, we now have broken out of what we call the negative cycle of interaction, and we formed a positive cycle. That the more the withdrawn partner is able to engage with their heart, the more the pursuing partner or partners are able to soften. And the more the pursuing partner can soften, the more it makes space for the withdrawing partner to reengage. We now have a positive bonding cycle. But that's not enough repair. For us in EFT, if you notice, I have not talked about solutions yet. So all the things like,
Mhm.
help us communicate better, better sex, better this, better that, we don't really focus on that in EFT for us until stage three. And in stage three, now what we want to say is now that you have a new positive cycle, what is it like for you to use that new cycle to repair old problems? So when these things come up now, what does it look like for you all to engage these topics? And what we just want to see is once again, in a way I was like, is do they know how to drive the new fancy car they're taking off the lot, right? Do they know about all the features and amenities and those kinds of things? And how can they apply it to their relationship now? And then that would be the part of repair. And by the way, let me say this, even from the research, whether you look at Gottman's kind of like good enough response around bids, whether you go back to Wincott's research about good enough parenting, whether now looking at Edtronic's research about good enough and secure parenting, Dan Hughes' work on, secure parenting. And what you find is every relationship goes through moments of attunement, disruption, and repair. And the real truth of a relationship being secure is not that they are always in a state of connected attunement. Is that though when disruptions come, they have the ability to repair, which actually builds more trust in the relationship. So what we're doing in EFT is we want to know where do they get off track, how do they try and repair, and where do they get stuck in their repair process, and then we come alongside them to help them there.
We're going to open it for questions in just a couple of minutes. So if anyone does have a question, you can put it in the chat line or just say, I want to speak to James, and you can come on the screen. But so my question is about a case example,
Hmm.
because I wonder if you could give us a case example of a couple in any of those phases and how you help them in the early stage, well, maybe the stages of repair.
Yeah.
Case examples are always helpful.
Okay. Nope. That's good. Let me see. Let me think of. Let me think of one now. Okay. So let's see. Because this case example actually has several different levels of repair. So the couple is, let's see, cisgender, heterosexual, identify as white couple with yeah. And so when they presented, they have been married for about 15 years. And in their marriage, what they were presenting with is the wife who would be in what we call the pursuer role, or the kind of anxious, preoccupied role. The husband, the male partner, would be in the avoidant role, or what in EFT we call the withdrawer. And she talks about the years of emotional neglect from him and emotional unavailability. And we proceeded in therapy, but it was really hard in the early phase to slow down some of her criticism and to keep him from just going to defensive kind of withdrawal. So the early phase of treatment for them was even just begin to work on going towards kind of like some of her reactive anger, to understand her anger, to get her doing small bits of work around being able to help us understand the anger and talk about the anger with her husband versus just kind of letting it out, but also helping him stay still and not go away, helping him to begin to touch his fear that usually makes him run away and what's making him run away, and turn and talk to her instead of just going away enough to where at the end of stage one, I just want them, not that everything's perfect, but I want to know, can she stay in her vulnerability with him enough to be able to send clear signals about what's happening in her inner world, and he can also stay to respond to her, but also he can stay with his own heart and feelings. And by the end of stage one, the more that they can stay in their emotion and be open to the other partner's emotion that says, uh-oh, you're stabilizing. Stage two, that case example turns towards, we always in EFT, we always start stage two with the most withdrawn partner. And the reason why is because they have been, in a way, they've been leaning out of the relationship with their emotion and with their heart. And what I need to do is get them to bring their heart and emotion back into the relationship. Also, the withdrawer tends to focus on just pleasing their other partner, but they still, once again, never talk about what they feel and what they need. They make their whole existence about, what do you need to make you happy? What do you need? What do you want? What do you want? But that's not a good relationship for anybody. The best relationships are when they can have mutual levels of vulnerability, where both partners or all partners have the ability to share and respond to one another. And that actually feels good. Quick segue, because if we look at Phil Shaver's work, what Phil Shaver would say is, in an adult romantic bond, there are three systems that must be working for the relationship to be secure. There is, of course, the attachment system we've been talking about. There's a sexual system about what's a sexual bond look like between them. But the third one that we don't pay enough attention to, I think sometimes, is the caregiving system. Meaning, even in situations, partners want to know, they want to know that I have the ability to be there for you and to love you in your places of need. So when that withdrawing partner only focuses on giving the partner what they want, but they don't show up at their heart, the other partner can say, thank you for being here for me. But there's a little part of their heart that says, but why don't I ever get to do this for you? And does that mean I'm crazy? Does that mean there's something wrong with me, that
Mhm.
I'm so needy, but somehow you don't need anything? And then that could also make them feel insecure because, like, why don't you need me? Are you getting your needs met somewhere else? Am I not enough for you? Am I too much for you? Like, why don't I ever get that chance to be there with you? So anyway, so I do want, so in stage two, I want that withdrawer to one, come forward with their heart and allow their partner to care for them. Because then I want
Mhm.
that withdrawer to know you don't only have to rely on self regulation, you can also trust co regulation with your partner. And then as that withdrawing partner, I feel, I hope I don't give up too much on the record on the conference because they won't want to come. But anyway, um, but then as that withdrawer gets their needs met, that actually resources their heart where they now have more space to give to their partner. Then we would invite then we would invite the pursuing partner to also do that same deep vulnerable work to come forward with their heart, so that way the withdrawer gets a chance to be there for them. But by the way, pay attention. I never want to ask the pursuer to do that first. Because if I
Mm.
ask the pursuer to do that first and the withdrawer is not re-engaged, I only set that pursuer up to be hurt and disappointed. And also it hurts the withdrawer because many withdrawers, it's not that they don't care. Many withdrawers, from what I've seen, this is not official research, by the way, you all, but what I've seen from many of the withdrawers in my office is they became withdrawers because no one ever co-regulated enough for them. So therefore, they don't know what to give to other people because they haven't gotten it themselves. And so they've just been used to having to go away with their heart. And to some degree, they don't understand why their partner keeps coming to them with these needs and they feel inadequate. So I want to help the withdrawer feel some success and know what co-regulation feels like. So that way, when their partner does reach for them, they have a template inside of themselves to be able to give it to their partner.
In your experience, you're dealing with a lot of heavy issues that have been couples been struggling with, and maybe not even understanding, obviously, where they're coming from. How long is EFT work with couples generally, over a period of time or sessions? And
Yeah.
is it weekly sessions, bi-weekly sessions? Is it longer than an hour? Do you have intensive, longer 2 or 3 hour sessions? What do you find works best?
Good question, Michael. So I do work at a nonprofit. So right now it's at an hour for me. I do try weekly with my clients just because, particularly if they're coming in, most of my clients are coming in the throes of distress, right? Or let's go back to Gottman's research. Couples typically wait 6 to 7 years of being in their distress before they ever reach out for help. So it's usually pretty bad by the time it gets to us. Now, let me say this: the a length of time the couple is in treatment, I think, is affected by the level of how much trauma is involved in the relationship and also within each partner's heart. Because trauma can make it is not only am I trying to work on you being safe here, there's also that kind of trauma playing in the background that can make it really hard to be safe in your vulnerability. Also, it depends on how long they've been in the cycle and how I would say how messy and painful the cycle has been. Um, Also, those are a couple things, and also, Mike, I'll say also the resources they have available to them. Do they have a community of support outside of
Hmm.
therapy? And I've seen some couples come in, and when they have, whether it's a religious community, a community of whether it's, I've had people that come from like the acting sector here, and they like are, and it's just, but they have this like group of like attachment around them. Those couple that have more of those kind of attachment resources support them tend to go a little bit further and faster. But let me get to the question that all therapists want to know about. I mean, it is not uncommon sometimes for a couple that has been in the, oh, and also by the way too, how long have they been in the cycle? So I could tell you now, like my couples that are newly married that have maybe only been stuck in their cycle for about a couple months or so or a couple years goes really quick. The couple that's been married 15 years and the cycle's been active for 15 years, that's really difficult. So it could be nothing for a couple to sometimes be in stage one of EFT for a year or more. And I would say stage one of EFT is the hardest one. Everyone wants to get to stage two because that's where it's like, that's the beautiful work where, by the way, that's stage two is where Sue book got the name for her book, Hold Me Tight. Because the big EFT, what we call the Hollywood moment in EFT is when we go for step seven, when the person goes down into their attachment, pain, and fear. And we actually ask them to take the big risk of, and when you're in this place, when the cycle tells you you're unlovable and you feel this gut wrenching pain, how could your partner be with you right now that would comfort your heart? That's a huge risk because we're saying literally, not when you go home, like right now. Can you feel that pain right here, right now? And could you turn to your partner? And could you ask for what you need right here? Um, so that's one part. But stage one is the hardest part because stage one is we're working through all the blocks and all the protection to their vulnerability.
Well, I think we have some questions. Emily, what's the story with our questions?
They're actually mostly questions about how wonderful Dr. Hawkins is.
Mhm.
So we had one in the chat, and then I do see Sharon's hand up. So,
Ah!
so during the 2-day training, will there be concrete tools and strategies for therapists to work with each stage of repair? And can this work be done if working with an individual client whose partner won't engage in counseling?
Hmm,
Yes, yes to
good
all the
question.
above. Yes, it will be concrete. In that training, I will take more time and talk about the macro interventions of EFT and then the micro interventions of EFT. And that will give you, I think that's what you mean when you're asking about practical. That's where it would get really practical. And just really some of the clinical insight. Also, yes, you can do this individual work with now I'll always get a little bit leery when I'm working with an individual and the partner won't come in because it's so hard because the other part of the system isn't there. But yes, can we do a form of individual therapy? Yes, we can.
Great. And Sharon has her hand up. Hi, Sharon.
Hey, Sharon. Hey,
Hi,
friend.
Emily. Hey, friend. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Sharon.
Um, James, it's such a treat to see you virtually in Canada. So thank you for making the trek up.
Ah, thank you.
My question to you harkens back to what you said about therapist presence and
Mhm.
our own ability to go deep.
Yeah.
Um, so lots of steps, stages in EFT,
Mm-hmm.
and we often want to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could say a little bit more about what has happened for you as
Mm.
you have allowed yourself to resonate with the client's emotional experience.
Wow. Sharon, very good question. You actually made me feel things there.
Oh,
That's
you're
good. So I like that you said what's happened for me. So let me answer it from that personal standpoint first. I would say James is a fairly smart person. And no, I can read the books, I can read the articles. And I think if I'm being completely honest, I tried to outsmart my clients way too much. And that actually made my job harder because I was trying to get ahead of them. I was trying to nuance them into a spot of where I think they could needed to be, or I was trying to teach them out of it. And what I had to come to do was, Sharon, is I had to coach myself to accept what is and not fight against it, but actually invite it forward. Because being, I said once again, a reform withdrawer, is I have to see my client's distress. And even if it gets reactive in session, that's actually my friend because their emotions are indicators of where they need help. So if I pull the emotion out of the session, I've pulled out all really the juice and the indicators that show me where we need to be. But not only is it trying to show me from a cognitive standpoint, Sharon, is I allow my client's emotions to pull me to where we need to be. So I'll admit it, I let my client's experience run through me. And that then becomes all the language, the pacing, and tone for all of my sessions.
Mm.
And then I'm not trying to outthink you. I'm walking gently and so ever closely right beside you. And I think, Sharon, that's allowed me to get to some places that I couldn't get before because I wasn't making my client's nervous system feel safe. Yeah, so that's my answer right now. And you got enough out of me there. That was good.
and I do see a hand up, and there's a question in the chat of for someone new to EFT, would you have any recommendations for some readings prior to your training?
Oh, of course. Any book written by Sue. No, no, but seriously, I mean, if you want a quick overview, there is Sue's book, which I would say is really the pinnacle of her work. The attachment. Oh gosh, I'm going. We call it ATIP, attachment theory in process. I think. She'll
In
tell me if I'm getting it
practice.
wrong. In practice, there we go. I always get that wrong. Actually, one of my favorite books from Sue was her trauma book. Actually, That was my favorite Sue Johnson book, was her EFT and trauma book, which, by the way, the pre-order of that has just come out. Her and Leanne had it mostly done before Sue died, and then Leanne, I think, had to finish one chapter after Sue passed. So that's being re-released right now. But those have been my two favorite Sue Johnson. And then if you want to know about the research behind Sue's work, kind of her translation of her research to the general public, Love Sense, is a great book.
Thank you. And Emily.
Thank you, James. This has been just wonderful. And I did my EFT training a couple years ago, and it just is so wonderful to just sit in this and
Mm.
hear. And I've just been writing notes. So many things you've been saying have been absolute gems. And I'm just like, oh, that's perfect. I'm just gonna grab
There you go.
But I was just wondering, I have a super easy question for you. Could you just go through the three, you shared that there was caring, sexuality, and something else that all
Attachment.
relationships needed.
Yeah. Phil Shaver kind of looks at it as like there's three systems to every adult romantic bond. Of course, attachment is always there from the cradle to the grave. And once again, the way I define attachment, kind of going to Bowlby's work, because sometimes people mix the words attachment and bonding, and they're different. Attachment is actually your kind of like the motivational system that gets activated in moments of distress. So it's not, that doesn't sound so warm and fuzzy, right? But it is the alarm system that in all mammals, by the way, that says, uh-oh, there's danger, danger, danger. I need to go find connection with my safe, trusted other. Or it's just going off saying, I've been too far away from my safe, trusted other. I need to check in. So that's the attachment part. And then the caregiving part is in adults, of course, in children, the classical attachment theory focuses on children getting care. But once you come into an adult, you're not only trying to get care. In adult bonds, you also want to succeed at being able to give care. And so we need to be paying attention to those two things in relationships all the time. What is it like for someone to reach? What is it like for someone to respond? And where does that break down? And with George Fowler, who's another mentor I work with, what he says is every negative cycle between adults is because the caregiving system isn't working. I would go on to say it's also but just because they're not either sharing or responding to each other. Because I don't even know how to care for you if you never give me a chance by giving me a clear guide to where you need comfort. And then the last one is the sexual part. And now sexual can be so many things. We're not just talking about quality, frequency of intercourse. It's just saying in adult bonds, there's another way that they also connect with each other. There's a different way that they touch and communicate that kind of sense of bond that's different than a child-parent relationship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a question in the chat of, I love the way you present. How does empathy play a part of your engagement with a client?
That's good. If I can, if what this is, I like this is a quote that someone brought out about Sue at her memorial. It says, in the moments when you find yourself when you find yourself frustrated with your clients, empathize, empathize, empathize. In other words, what Sue is saying is even the most distressing parts of your client's life make sense when you can see them in context. And when I can see you in context, then I can begin to have some empathy. And so I remember one time talking to Sue about this. Sue would tell you she would say, I am a radical feminist. And so she was telling me about this one case she had where the husband kept referring to, in not so nice ways, to the physical attributes of his wife. And Sue was like, I want to punch him. But even in my frustration, though, she took time to say, help me understand. Why are you saying these words at this moment to your partner? And what the husband finally let Sue see is that he's like, I don't know how to connect emotionally with my wife. She keeps shutting down because in this case, the wife was the withdrawer, he was the pursuer. And the last way I have to be able to connect with her is our sexual bond. And I'm concerned that if her physical health goes down, that I'll even lose that too. So now going back is Sue then found a new place to empathize with him. So then she was able to say, oh, Now I can empathize with why you say these words. Even though they're painful for your partner, it's hard for me to hear. Now my heart understands. This is your best way to stay connected to your sweetheart. This is you fighting for the last little thing you have to hold on to this precious bond. Can you see how her empathy converted her a presence with that client? If she had not had the ability to empathize, then her next clinical intervention could have been like, dude, you need to clean up your language. You need to say that differently. I don't like the way you're talking here right now. She could have, and then just shamed them out of it. But now her empathy helped her go towards compassion. And actually, most of our clients, even though I don't, let me make sure y'all hear me say this, there is never room for abusive behavior, ever, 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 ever. But there is something for many of our clients that is driving the behaviors that they are involved in. Now, outside of abuse, we'll say is, I need to understand, why are you being critical? Why are you shutting down? You're not just doing it because you're a bad person. More than likely, our clients are doing it because they're afraid. There's fear there that they're not making clear.
Wow.
Thank you.
James, thank you. This has been such a pleasure. I know you'll be back with us. We're also offering a big discount for people who are watching this. It'll be in the chat box and in the email. There's one more question. Maybe if you answer it
So
quickly.
someone is doing a group training for individual EFT with Dr. Les Greenberg. How different is your training to that one?
So this is, I can't really speak fully to that because I want to give full credit. I don't want to speak to Les Greenberg because I've never done that. But I'll tell you the things I've heard from distant past. Sue kind of like, now this is in Sue's words, she would take more of a, Sue doesn't like when emotion is treated as secondary. So she would say, like, don't, kind of talk about emotion and then treat it like a distant step cousin. So for Sue, it's like she would say she gives more of a little bit of honor to the actual emotion, where she feels in other models, at times maybe emotion is secondary. That's my best answer. That's all you can get out of me there.
Good question. And they work closely together
That's right.
back a long time ago. Listen, it's been such a pleasure, James. What we like to do to close, besides me saying thank you, is we have a cacophony of thank yous by unmuting everybody. They can
Aw.
say their thank you and goodbye. So I really appreciate this. It's been great meeting you, and I just really appreciate the way you're carrying on Sue's work, and I can see why she liked you so much.
Aw,
So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see
Thank you,
everyone
James,
Thank
so
soon.
much.
you.
Thank
Really,
you.
really
Thank
fantastic.
you.